December 28th, 1958, Yankee Stadium. A raw gray afternoon in New York with snow flurries dusting a frozen field. The Baltimore Colts and the New York Giants were preparing to play for the championship of the National Football League. For the 45 million Americans who tuned in on their black and white television sets, it was a welcome distraction during the quiet week between Christmas and New Year's. But very few of them, if any, understood they were about to witness a pivot point in American culture, because at that moment, professional football was a little more than a sideshow. The undisputed king of the American gridiron was the college game. In the 1950s, college football was a cultural institution woven into the fabric of the nation. Autumn Saturdays were sacred events marked by marching bands, ancient rivalries, and a level of pageantry the NFL could only dream of. The sport was anchored in the prestige of great universities, from the Big Ten powerhouses in the Midwest to the passionate followings in the Deep South. A team like Notre Dame commanded a truly national fan base, a phenomenon built over decades of tradition. The scale of college football was immense. By mid-century, college games were drawing over 17 million fans a year. Architectural monuments were built to the sport, stadiums like the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, which regularly hosted more than 100,000 spectators for a single game. The media treated it with reverence. Newspapers devoted massive sections to the college ranks. Coaches like Newt Rockne were national celebrities, earning more than the university presidents they worked for. The Heisman Trophy was a national event, crowning players who were celebrated as heroes. And then there were the pros, who played on Sundays. Their league was a grittier, less glamorous affair. Contemporary observers often described it as being little more respectable than professional wrestling. The entire NFL operation was famously run not from a gleaming headquarters in Manhattan, but from the kitchen of Commissioner Burt Bell's home in a Philadelphia suburb. Teams were unstable, with franchises like the Dallas Texans folding as recently as 1952. The professional life was anything but glamorous. In 1958, the players were still fighting for a league-wide minimum salary of just $5,000. Many of the game's toughest men had to work second jobs in the off-season just to make ends meet. From The Best Game Ever, Giants vs. Colts, 1958, and The Birth of the Modern NFL by Mark Bowden. Most of the players held jobs in the city, many of them working right through the season. Tight end Jim Mutscheller sold insurance at a firm downtown where people would stop him on the street to congratulate or commiserate with him about the latest game. He would report to work early, work all morning in the office, and then take off in the afternoon for practice. He would then return to the office most evenings to work into the night. Art Donovan was a liquor salesman and would take off after practice to visit stores through Maryland, Delaware, and even Virginia, wining and dining store owners who were always delighted to see the hilarious Fatso walk through their door. Johnny Unitas, Gino Marchetti, and other players worked shifts at Bethlehem Steel, the mammoth industrial facility at Dundalk, along the city's waterfront. The contrast was stark. While college stars were celebrated in magazines, many pros were anonymous laborers in a fringe sport. The television landscape told the same story. College football had prime Saturday afternoon slots. The NFL's broadcasts were inconsistent, limited mostly to the cities that hosted a team. To give you an idea of where the NFL stood, from December 26, 2008, Doug Nye, a columnist for the state newspaper, wrote, "Just how low on the sports ladder was pro football then? It was so low that Sports Illustrated devoted one page to the 1956 NFL Championship, and that was on page 50. This was the world as it stood on that cold December afternoon, a world where one version of football was a cultural behemoth and the other was a struggling business. No one watching that day could have known that the grainy images flickering on their screens would ignite a revolution, toppling one empire and building a new one in its place. The championship game itself was a convergence of circumstances that seemed almost scripted for drama. On the field that day were an incredible 17 future Hall of Fame inductees, players, coaches, and executives. The level of talent was simply staggering. Baltimore's story was pure Hollywood. They were led by a quarterback who, just 3 years earlier, had been cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers and was playing semi pro ball for $6 a game. His name was Johnny Unitas, and he was about to become the prototype of the modern field general. His favorite target, Raymond Berry, seemed just as unlikely a hero. Berry had a bad back, one leg was shorter than the other, and his eyesight was so poor he needed contact lenses. But through sheer obsession and meticulous preparation, he had developed 88 different moves to get open, and he had made himself nearly unstoppable. On the other sideline, New York fielded one of the greatest coaching staffs ever assembled. Their offensive coordinator was some fiery guy named Vince Lombardi. Their defensive coordinator was a quiet analytical genius named Tom Landry. Their revolutionary 4-3 defense, built around the ferocious middle linebacker Sam Huff, was the most dominant in the league. The game unfolded like a classic 3-act play. Baltimore took a 14-3 lead into halftime. But then, in the third quarter, the Giants roared back. In a wild, spectacular sequence, Giants quarterback Charlie Connerly hit receiver Kyle Rote, who fumbled deep in Colts territory, only for teammate Alex Webster to scoop up the ball and run it down to the 1-yard line. The Giants scored, the momentum shifted, and the game was on. The fourth quarter provided the game's most legendary sequence. Baltimore was down 17-14. The clock was bleeding away. With under 2 minutes remaining, Unitas got the ball on his own 14-yard line. 86 yards of frozen turf stood between his team and history. What followed was one of the most famous drives in football history. Cool and unflappable, Unitas calmly dissected the Giants' vaunted defense. 3 consecutive strikes to his clutch receiver, Raymond Berry, for 25, 15, and 22 yards. In a flash, the Colts were in field goal range. With just 7 seconds left on the clock, the kick was good. The game was tied. For the first time in NFL playoff history, the championship would be decided in sudden death overtime. Unitas called every single play himself on that final drive. A methodical 13-play, 80-yard march down the field. He mixed short passes to Berry with tough runs by fullback Alan Amici. He was a field general in complete command under a level of pressure no quarterback had ever faced before. Finally, with the ball on the 1-yard line, Unitas handed off to Amici, who plunged into the end zone. The game was over. The Baltimore Colts were champions. The NFL championship game was the birth of a modern institution. As the crowd at Yankee Stadium erupted, the true explosion wasn't in the stands. It was happening in 45 million living rooms across the country. For the first time in human history, the television set was at the centerpiece of family living, replacing the radio. 9% of homes owned a TV in 1950, and this would increase to nearly 90% by the end of the decade. The 1958 NFL Championship game was one of the largest television audiences of the entire year, comparable to the Academy Awards. For the first time, a mass audience saw professional football, not just as a sport, but as a perfectly choreographed drama. The visual medium of television was uniquely suited to capture its blend of strategy, suspense, and brutal elegance in a way that radio never could. There was even a moment of television chaos that had become part of the game's mythology. During the tense overtime period, the national broadcast feed from the NBC suddenly went dead. An essential cable had been accidentally unplugged. To this day, rumors persist that an NBC employee, in a moment of panic, ran onto the field to cause a delay and give the technicians time to fix the problem. The incident highlights how invested the nation had become in the outcome. When the feed returned, the drama continued, and by the end of the broadcast, heroes had been born. Johnny Unitas went from a regional star to a national icon overnight. He became Mr. Quarterback, the face of the NFL, his performance under pressure establishing the template for the modern celebrity athlete. This national exposure proved television's power. Unlike scattered college games tied to a regional loyalties, this was a singular event, a shared cultural experience that everyone was talking about the next day. The broadcast provided irrefutable proof of concept. Professional football was the perfect sport for the television age, and the consequences of that shared experience would begin almost immediately. The aftermath of the 1958 championship witnessed an explosion of interest and investment that fundamentally altered American sports. The numbers are staggering. Television contracts, the financial engine of modern sports, exploded. The fee for the championship game in 1955 was a mere $100,000. By 1962, just 7 years after the Unitas led victory, the league's annual television contract was worth $4.65 million. That's an increase of 4,540%. The dam had broken. This new potential attracted visionaries. In 1960, Pete Rozelle was elected NFL commissioner. He moved the league office to New York City and implemented a revolutionary league think philosophy. He understood that the NFL's greatest strength was as a unified television product, and he convinced team owners to share television revenue equally, ensuring the entire league would rise together. The 1958 game also proved there was more than enough appetite to go around. When Texas billionaire Lamar Hunt was denied an NFL expansion team, he didn't give up. Having seen the television potential demonstrated by the 58 championship, he simply started his own league in 1960, the American Football League. The AFL immediately secured its own television deal, creating a fierce rivalry with the NFL. This competition drove a bidding war for talent that sent player salaries soaring. The days of off-season jobs were numbered. In 1958, the players were fighting for a $5,000 minimum. By 1969, the average salary had hit $25,000, a 400% increase. And in 1965, the AFL's New York Jets signed a college quarterback named Joe Namath to an unprecedented $427,000 contract, a figure that was simply unthinkable a decade earlier. The cultural tide had turned. Magazines like Sports Illustrated shifted their focus from college to pro football. By 1961, the two leagues had expanded from 12 to 22 teams. In 1962, a new company called NFL Films was founded, creating mythic slow-motion highlight reels that romanticized the sport for a new generation. You remember the trombones and the horns and the trumpets in that thing? I won't try to imitate it, it'd be horrible. But it was pretty amazing stuff. Attendance tripled, new stadiums were built, and by 1968, a Gallup poll made it official. Football had surpassed baseball as America's favorite spectator sport. The final act of the transformation came in 1967. The competition between the NFL and AFL had become so intense that a merger was inevitable. To cap the season, the champions of the two leagues would meet in the final contest, called the Super Bowl. It would go on to become the most watched annual television broadcast in American history, the ultimate monument built on the foundation laid that snowy day in 1958. The 1958 championship game was a spectacular contest, but its title as the greatest game ever played comes not just from the drama on the field, but from its undeniable power as a catalyst. Johnny Unitas' 2-minute drill, Raymond Berry's unlikely heroics, and Alan Amici's overtime touchdown created a shared national experience that proved professional football was the most compelling and marketable show in town. It elevated a struggling league from a secondary sport into America's dominant entertainment spectacle. The speed of this transformation is what remains so remarkable. In less than a decade, the entire landscape of American sports was redrawn. The college game, while obviously still popular, was relegated to a strong but secondary role. The NFL, once the scrappy underdog, was now the undisputed king. The 1958 NFL championship game redefined American sports culture and created the template for modern sports entertainment that we still see today. It proved that sometimes history really does turn on a single moment. The media dubbed this the greatest game ever played, while its impact is undeniable. What do you think is truly the greatest football game you've ever seen? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you who remember that era, I'd love to hear your memories of pro versus college ball. What was it like watching the sport transform?